Hi, I'm Shawn.
Hi, I'm Emily, and welcome to Impromptu, the podcast where we talk about music and whatever else we feel like.
All right, welcome to episode 2, everybody. Yeah,
Oh, am I supposed to say something?
I don't know. We don't have this
My bad.
scripted, totally
No, we
scripted.
don't.
So, bear with us as we navigate these
Yes.
podcast waters.
Pull up a chair, get your favorite snack,
Put your feet
do
up,
some
maybe.
vocal warm-ups. We're going to be talking about choir today.
Yes. Oh, we figured, when we're going to jump
Spit
into
out
it.
your gum, though.
Oh, yes. No gum.
No gum in choir rehearsal.
And if you're holding a pen, put it down. Get a pencil.
Get a pencil.
Get a pencil.
Margaret, you don't have a pencil? Margaret.
Oh, too many times I can recall working with my church choir and having a mark on their music, and there'd be one or two of them that would have pens out, and I would make it a really big deal, like be overly dramatic about it and everything, but they learned to never use pen again, so
Good.
It worked out.
That's good. I always sometimes I keep a pencil behind my ear so often that I forget it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking around for a pencil even though it's right there. I have a problem though where my hair is very long and thick. So things get lost in there very easily. So there have been some choir pencils lost that I've had to dig out.
Oh boy.
I
See,
know.
my ears just aren't built for having a pencil behind. I have tried many, many times
Really?
to put a pencil behind my ear,
It
and
just slides right out.
it just slides right out. My ears just are not built for pencils.
Wow.
I know. It's unfortunate.
That's very
But
unfortunate.
I usually wear shirts with pocket protectors things, so I can always
Really?
keep a pencil
I've never
in
seen
there.
a real human with a pocket protector. I thought that was just like a...
Well,
thing
I don't know if they're
to
pocket
do on TV.
protectors,
Okay.
but more so just like the pockets,
Right. That's
Anyway,
smart. Yeah. Doing what you got to do.
So yeah, today we thought it'd be fun just to kind of nerd out a little bit.
A little bit? A lot of
okay,
it.
A lot of it. And share some of our favorite choral pieces. We have a few different categories. We have like our favorite overall piece ever, which is totally unfair to ask somebody, what's your favorite choral piece?
That's a terrible question. Why do we do this to ourselves?
There's so many good ones. There's so many good ones.
So many.
But yeah, unfortunately, we did it to ourselves. And I know for me, my top favorite choral piece has earned its spot as my top favorite choral piece. It has beat some of the other contenders, which are in my runner-up list. But then we also have like our favorite choral piece of right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have our favorite masterworks to talk about. So
That's right.
let's get started.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I guess I'll talk a little bit about my all-time favorite choral piece, which is Song for Athene, written by Sir John Tavener.
Love that one.
Oh boy, I could go on this one for days.
Goosebumps.
So I had the pleasure of singing this my senior year with the Concordia Choir. Before my senior year, I had heard Song for Athene many times on many recordings. And it was always kind of like this would be so cool to perform. This would be so cool to conduct kind of a thing. And the stars aligned my senior year, and Dr. Clausen programmed Song for Athene. And I remember going through our choir bag thing, the zippers.
Oh,
And
those pouches.
the pouches.
I remember those.
Yes, the
I always
pouches.
thought those were so dumb.
But you know what? They were so practical. They were so practical because they never needed to like worry about your music getting all like jumbled up in the pockets of a folder.
Okay, well, I always 3-hole punched my music so that it could be in the folder. 3-ring binder. Anyways, keep going. Song for Athene.
Well, so I was going through, we got our pouches, and of course the first thing I'm doing is I'm going through seeing what songs we're going to sing. And when I got to Song for Athene, I pulled it out and I was showing the people around me. I'm like, this is going to be your favorite because this is my favorite. This is going to be the best song in the entire year. And I don't know if I can speak on everyone's behalf, but I know when we sang Song for Athene, whenever we sang Song for Athene, I think it was just very special to all of us.
It's very powerful. It's a slow burn.
Yeah. It starts off, kind of ethereal. I mean, the whole song is ethereal. It's when I put headphones on, close my eyes, and I listen to it, I just picture it walking right up to the gates of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know how much more ethereal you can get than that, but that's kind of how I experience the piece.
Yeah, the truly awesome power of a spiritual force.
Yes.
Whether that be God or love or anything like that.
Right. And that's kind of how John Tavener wrote all of his music.
Yes.
He wrote it through this, ethereal...
very influenced by Orthodox Christian music.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so you get a sense of that anytime you listen to any of his works. But I think Song for Athene is kind of at the God tier of his works for experiencing the ether. So this is kind of how we're gonna work through this episode of the podcast. We're going to insert some bits of recordings of various choirs singing these different pieces. We're not going to play the entire thing, obviously, for copyright purposes, but just a little snippet for you to kind of get a taste. And then in the description for the podcast on SoundCloud, we will have links to these recordings and YouTube videos where you can watch and listen to the rest of it. Mm-hmm. So...
I want to add one thing about Song for Athene. My first encounter with it was watching a video on YouTube of it being sung by the boys' choir at Westminster Abbey for the funeral of Princess Diana, as they go to take the coffin, put it on their shoulders. Not the boy choir, the pallbearers, but... That's too much for the little ones.
Yes.
But it's this very elaborate step-by-step process as the boys are singing, and they make this very slow, deliberate march with the casket on their shoulders. Oh, it was so powerful.
I agree.
In that space, that acoustic space,
yeah.
The pure tone of those young singers.
I
and
have
then
watched
just the
that.
Emotional weight of knowing that this beloved person had died before their time.
Right. Yeah, I had watched that video many times. So if you have not seen it, definitely look it up. Might even link it in the playlist.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thing in our description. So I guess we will listen to Song for Athene now. Here is a recording sung by Sonus, directed by Tamber Sirpka. And it was for their EP called the Parthenon Sessions. So enjoy.
Okay, so my favorite choral piece with, put an asterisk on that phrase because, like you said, it's a very hard decision to make
Yep.
and my mind may change tomorrow. But the one that I always come back to is called Look, Be, Leap by Libby Larson, who is a fantastic contemporary composer based
Hmm.
here in the Twin Cities. She's very well known for being an advocate for composers everywhere, an educator, and she is just. I've had a few chances to learn from her, and she's got this energy about her that's just boundless, and I really hear that in this piece. It's got this harmonic language that is both. It pulls me in because it's both really beautiful, but it's not your typical here's a tonic chord, here's a dominant, here's a it's kind I want to say it's angular. It's kind of pointy and spiky, but it still draws you in. It doesn't alienate the listener. And it's got this text that is very empowering and just makes you feel very triumphant. Look, be, leap, paint trees in flame, bushes burning, roar in the broad sky, know your color. Be, produce that the widenesses be full and burst their wombs, riot in redness, delirious with light, swim bluely through the mind. So in the text, there's all this really stirring imagery
Yeah.
paired with that really arresting kind of harmonic language that Libby uses is known for. So I don't know. I kind of think of this as this piece just vibrates with all of this energy, like the potential that we hold within ourselves. That kind of makes it. That's what I hear when I hear this piece, and it's written for soprano and alto voices. So when you take that type of text in it and apply it to, female identifying people, it's a very motivating, very empowering kind of message as well. So I love this one so much, and it's got a great piano part. So
Yeah.
that's always an extra
Icing on the
bonus
cake.
for me.
Yep. All right,
And
should we listen
here-
to it?
Yes, and I should say this is performed by the Allstate Women's Choir from a couple years ago, and it's conducted by Sigrid Johnson, who, may she rest in peace. She is a very influential music educator in our area, having taught at St. Olaf for several years, several decades, and did a lot of work with Vocal Essence as well.
And just to specify, this is the Minnesota All-State Choir.
The Minnesota All-State Choir. Yes.
Yep.
It's the only one that matters.
Oh boy.
Shots fired.
Texas squares up. Them are fighting words.
And without further ado, here's that recording.
All right, moving on to our next category, our favorite choral piece of right now. kind of the songs that are just in our brain at the moment. For me, I just shared this out on Facebook a couple days ago, but it's a piece that I'll pull up if I just need to be present in a piece. This piece is called If I Had a Hammer, written by Craig Hella Johnson. And you may know this text from Pete Seeger's If I Had a Hammer. It's the exact same text. However, it's a completely different piece. It's an entirely original composition from Craig. And it starts out with this like primal drum feel. And in the recording they use, there's a band that comes in. I think there's a bass, there's guitar, and then that kind of loops for a little bit, and then the choir comes in with this rhythmic chant, If I Had a Hammer. And it's written for double choir. So each of the choirs has this just very rhythmic motif, and they're kind of echoing each other. So you kind of just get this like back and forth, just rhythm drive, and it's really cool sounding. And later on in the piece, when it introduces the If I Had a Bell movement, there's more melodies that start to shine through the choir. And then it builds up towards the end of the piece where kind of all of the words become consolidated again. Well, I've got a hammer, and I've got a bell, and I've got a song to sing all over this land. It just, it's so cool. And the way he writes out his harmonies, it's just this huge wall of sound that honestly comes out of nowhere. So I think it takes the listener by surprise, and it just pulls them along for the ride. And that's kind of what got me glued into this piece, was this particular last section where it just comes out of nowhere. So I'm excited for you to listen to that. Did you want to add anything before we listen to it, Emily?
Yeah, so this piece was written by Peter, Paul, and Mary, the folk group from the 60s, and this reminded me, this was my first concert that I ever went to. I have no memory of it, but it's still my first concert. 2 weeks after I was born, my parents saw that Peter, Paul, and Mary were coming to Mall of America to play a show at the Rotunda. So they took little baby me and my two older siblings to the mall, and we all saw Peter, Paul, and Mary. So they're a group that's really, I grew up with them.
Yeah.
We played their music all the time.
Yeah. All right. Well, here is Craig's composition of If I Had a Hammer. Like I said before, completely different than the Pete Seeger one that we all know. And this is a recording by Conspirare. And in the playlist that I have in the podcast description, it'll take you to a YouTube video where you can actually see the score and look at the music as it's happening. So here it is.
It's the song of
So, my favorite piece that I've been listening to right now, my favorite of now, is actually an arrangement. It's called Water Fountain. And I don't know, Shawn, do you know the band Tune Yards?
Uh, Not really, no.
Okay, they are wild and fantastic, and they've got a lot of, I want to say it's like pop music and electronic music, but that doesn't seem like the right fit. It's a vocalist, a saxophone player, and some percussion, and probably some other stuff that I'm forgetting, but just very intricately built songs. They have an NPR Tiny Desk concert, actually, so you should check that out. And this song, Water Fountain, is very percussive, and it was arranged by a composer I'm not very familiar with, or an arranger, named Christopher Fulton. And the recording that I stumbled upon and just absolutely love is performed by the Vancouver Youth Choir, directed by Carrie Tennant. And I don't know, this piece is wild. There's body percussion, there is a bass player, there's moments where, it wouldn't be choral music unless there's like 3 key changes, right?
Yep.
It doesn't fall into that trap, but there's a moment where you think it's going to change keys, but instead it takes the first section of the piece and the second section of the piece, you layer them on top of each other, and they're in 2 different key areas. And like my brain is lighting up like a Christmas tree whenever I listen to this. It is so cool. And I've never seen the score, but it just sounds so hard to get these really syncopated rhythms down, along with, and just enjoy what you're singing too.
Right.
To get to that point where you've mastered it so that you can forget about the technical stuff. And these teenagers just do a fantastic job bringing the energy, but also the precision that this kind of piece needs to really pull it off. It's awesome.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to take a listen. And for our next category of choral pieces, we're going to talk about our favorite masterworks. And for me, I have one that sits at the very top of my list, and that is Craig Hella Johnson's Considering Matthew Shepard. If you have never heard this large work before, this is like the pinnacle of choral works that you should listen to.
For sure.
I mean, I don't know if there's another piece that can speak this deeply to the humanity of a person, So if you aren't aware of what this piece is or where it stems from, I'll give you a little backstory. So Matthew Shepard was a college student in Laramie, Wyoming, where he was a victim of a hate crime for being gay. And he was beaten and basically tied to a fence and left for dead. It wasn't until the next morning where the police found him and they brought him to the hospital where he was in a coma. I think it was for 6 days. I think the attack happened on October 6th, and he passed away on October 12th. I think those are the dates. And the story made headlines across the country and the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it just impacted a lot of people. And so Craig took parts of this story. He took poems as well, and he wrote this giant masterwork that's about an hour and 45 minutes long. And it takes you through the story of Matt as a kid growing up. It takes you through the story of him getting beat and left for dead. There
Richard,
are
basically.
Yeah, there's movements in this work where you are put into the perspective of the fence that he was tied to, and how it was seen as the scene of the crime, but also a shrine and a memorial to Matt. So it's a very powerful piece. There's 33 movements total. And so instead of playing a snippet, because I think it's unfair to play a snippet of only a couple of these movements, I'm going to leave the playlist of all of the movements in a link, as well as link a PBS recording from 2018 that intertwines story and dialogue with the actual performance from Conspirare. So you can kind of get a taste. I was lucky enough to see Conspirare sing this live in, I think it was the fall of 2018. They were on a tour with it, and they sang up at NDSU. And so I texted my friend Wyatt and wanted to see if he wanted to come along, and he said yes. And so we sat next to each other the entire time. And the minute it started, I started crying, because I'd listened to the album probably 6 or 7 times.
Oh, wow.
Before seeing this concert. I know, that's a lot. It's an hour and 45 minutes.
Right. And if I remember correctly, I haven't seen it, but there's an element of theater involved too. Yes. So you're not just watching a bunch of singers. You're watching the story play out in front of you. So that's got to be very powerful.
Right. There's no I wouldn't call it all choreographed, but there's movement involved and very strategic staging that just takes the effect and amplifies it of what you're hearing. And there's typically, a projection happening in the background that has different landscapes, and there were like video recordings of the newscasts that were happening, playing while the choir was singing. So with all of this coming together, it just makes for an incredible performance, and it really connects you with humanity as a whole, I think. And I don't know if there are many pieces like that can do it to that extent. So if you have not listened to it, please check out the description to get the links to listen to it. You won't regret it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say I do have a favorite movement of this piece. I haven't listened to the album as much as you have, of course, because I know it's your music, babe, pretty much. But I think the movement is called "Will You Meet Me Here?"
Meet Me Here.
Meet Me Here. Okay. Yep. And it's probably one of the shortest and most simplest movements of the entire work, but it is so direct, and it's like a folk song almost. And that's the one that really got me emotional. and it's tucked in the middle of a lot of, after you have this story compounding on itself, then there's just this one quiet. It's kind of like you see the spotlight shining on just one single person, very powerful. And another thing that I thought was cool, I haven't been able to see this live, but I remember a couple years back, they interned Matthew Shepard's ashes in the National Cathedral in Washington,
Yes.
D.C. And there was a big ceremony. I watched it on TV, and they sang music from Craig Hella Johnson's Considering Matthew Shepard.
Yes, Craig was there with Conspirare, and
Yes.
he led the
It
music
was
for the
amazing.
entire service. And boy,
Yeah.
I think I've watched that service probably 3 times through.
Wow. And it just kind of tells, of course, there's still so much work to do in terms of LGBTQ rights and acceptance and equality and all of that. But it really does show you how far we've come since the 90s and since the 80s with the AIDS crisis and things like that. That the fact that this young man was being honored at the National Cathedral, I don't know. I think that's pretty amazing. Still a lot of work to do, of course.
Yeah.
Don't want to minimize that.
When you were talking about Meet Me Here, I was brought back to the concert back in 2018. And this is kind of the turning point in Considering Matthew Shepard, because it starts out on a light note talking about who Matt was.
Yes.
And that's kind of like, you can kind of break this up into 3 parts if you look at it kind of as the grand scheme of things. You have the first part at the beginning to kind of introduce the story. And then you have the middle part, which takes you through the gut-wrenching, just all of the negative stuff and
the awful,
the hardships and the heartaches. And then you have the third part, which is kind of a resolution for hope. And Meet Me Here is that segue. It's the 30th movement. I have the score pulled up right in front of me here.
Okay.
And it starts off with 8 beats of the cello playing a C. And then out of kind of nowhere, the soloist comes in.
Can't go wrong with a cello drone. Just gotta say.
No, you can't. You can't. It's so effective, especially
Yes.
in this movement. So the soloist comes back in with "Meet Me Here, won't you meet me here, where the old fence ends and the horizon begins." I don't know if there's a better way to call for hope than that.
Yeah.
Oh, so. Anyway, please enjoy Considering Matthew Shepard.
Meet me here. Won't you meet me here? Where the old fence ends and the horizon begins. There's a balm in the silence, like an understanding air, where the old fence ends and the horizon begins.
Okay, so I have 2 masterworks today because I couldn't decide which one I liked more. They're so wonderful in different ways. The first is called A Mass by Minnesota composer Jocelyn Hagan. So this is a large work that, from what I understand, she writes a lot of commissioned work. It was commissioned by Matthew Culleton for The Singers, and it was premiered in 2011 in Minnesota. And I love, love, love this one because there's so many rich textures. The prelude is not done by vocalists. It's by a group of 5 cellos. When do you ever hear 5 cellos playing together? And it's just gorgeous and rich. And each one of the movements, the choir movements, take the standard Catholic Mass text, like a Kyrie, Gloria, Benedictus, Sanctus, stuff like that, Agnus Dei. And in between that are these moments for soloists singing modern poetry that it's not explicitly religious, but it is very spiritual and everything. So this is a neat mixture of something that was inspired by a very, very ancient Christian music tradition, but then combined with present day spiritual sensibilities. Mm-hmm. I don't know exactly how to explain it. And the instrumentation, there's cello, as I mentioned, there's marimba, and one of my favorite movements is called So Precious. It involves these percussion instruments where the percussionist is lowering bowls of water into, I think it's a container of more water. So you kind of hear this gong sound, and then the pitch bends as it's being surrounded by the water. It's really, really cool. Otherworldly is how I'd describe it. So, but here's my favorite choral excerpt from this piece. It is the Benedictus, performed by the Singers, conducted by Matt Culleton. My second selection is, well, if you're in the choral music world as an educator or you're a very dedicated listener, this one probably won't be brand new to you at all. But it might be. I don't know you. I don't know your life. This is called 7 Last Words of the Unarmed by, I believe you pronounce his name Joel Thompson. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. I've heard it both ways. I think it's Joel Thompson. And it is exactly what it sounds like. Each movement, there are 7 movements, and each movement is, the text is the last words of black men who were killed by police. Unarmed black men who were shot or killed by the police. So the first movement is named Kenneth Chamberlain. Officers, why do you have your guns out? Second movement, Trayvon Martin. What are you following me for? Amadou Diallo. Mom, I'm going to college. That one is just heart-wrenching.
Yep.
Fourth movement is Michael Brown. I don't have a gun, stop. Fifth movement, Oscar Grant. You shot me. Sixth movement, John Crawford. It's not real. Seventh movement is Eric Garner. I can't breathe. So kind of needless to say, it's a tough listen, especially now in the wake of what we've gone through here in the Twin Cities with the murder of George Floyd. You know, how many more people could theoretically be added to this piece of music? And the instrumentation for this piece is piano, and then double bass, cello, viola, and 2 violins. So it's got this kind of chamber music feel to it as well. And I find this instrumentation, this instrumental part very, very intriguing. There are moments where the chamber ensemble sounds like sirens. There are moments where the singers are thumping on their chests, so it sounds like a heartbeat. And the piano is playing really, really high registered notes. And I think either plucking the string of the piano or muting the string of the piano so that it sounds like one of those monitors that are just beeping along in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
So little quotations like that really grabbed me early on. And yeah, this idea, I feel like, could have gone horribly wrong, setting this stuff to music. It could have been really cheesy or grandiose, I don't know. But Mr. Thompson really nails it on the head. And the other thing that I think is interesting about this piece is I've heard him talk about the success of this piece and how he's grappling with the idea of he's well known for this piece that has to do with Black pain. And so I've heard him talk about, is he profiting off of this, or the ideas of the fact that he writes other music, mm-hmm. He's not, and I've seen some of his premieres. He has a wonderful setting of I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. He just wrote an opera based on the children's book The Snowy Day by Ezra Jack Keats, which that's one that I grew up with. That is a story that's all about joy and a little boy just playing in the snow, a little black boy enjoying his day wandering around his neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So I think those are important conversations to have. At what point are we creating awareness and creating a container to have hard conversations, but at what point are we also exploiting other people's pain? And here is a little snippet of the second movement called Trayvon Martin. What are you following me for?
And to wrap up our second episode, we are going to give you a list of our favorite runner-ups. I guess I'm going to start my list with Jake Runestad's And So I Go On. It's written for double choir. It's a beautiful piece about how to go on after a loss in life. It's really powerful. And then I also have Meditations of My Heart by Elaine Hagenberg. It's just
Yes,
a
Queen.
gorgeous choral piece with a wonderful piano accompaniment.
Beautiful.
And another one on my list is Dan Forrest's Come to Me, which
I
is...
don't know that one, actually.
Oh, well, we're going to change that. It's phenomenal. Very lulling, very spiritual. And then the last one on my list for runner-ups is Celine's Boat by Don McDonald. This is a really unique piece because it uses I want to call it a non-traditional percussion instrument to accompany the choir.
It's probably non-Western, but
Yeah, I suppose. On his website, it's called the Happy or the Hoppy, HAPI. I've also heard them called hang drums or hand drums before. It's basically kind of like an inverted steel drum, where instead of playing into a drum, the drum is kind of like turned inside out, and then you use your thumbs or mallets, I guess, to play the outside of this round drum that's either sitting on a pillow or sometimes your lap, and it just creates a really cool accompaniment. How about your runner-ups, Emily?
all right, my runner-ups are Things, Heaven and Hell by Meredith Monk. I don't know, would you call her a minimalist composer or what? She is pretty neat, doing some unique stuff. It's performed by a youth choir again, and I love this piece because it kind of sounds like what my brain is doing on the inside. Like, I'm not officially ADHD, but I'm noticing a lot of similar traits recently. Strange stuff, not strange, but it's not your typical singing a melody. It's more like creating mouth sounds. There's some buzzing kind of sounds and rhythmic ostinatos, and hard to describe. So check that one out. I suppose you could say like using extended techniques in the vocals.
Yeah.
All right, so that's a good one. My other runner-up, actually two of them, by the African American vocal ensemble Sweet Honey in the Rock, female vocal ensemble. Would You Harbor Me is this awesome piece with kind of a drone in the low voices. The lowest voice they have, this piece is by Esai Barnwell, and Esai Barnwell is also singing, she's basically their bass or tenor voice. She's got this wonderful low resonant drone happening. And the lyrics, Would You Harbor Me, are all about like, would you harbor me if I was a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew, a person with AIDS? You know, really kind of asking this tough question. You know, are you gonna, you talk the talk, but will you walk the walk? You know, that kind of a thing. And another piece by Sweet Honey in the Rock is Run, Mourner, Run, which I believe is an old spiritual. And I love that. It's got hand clapping, and I think there's some sort of tambourine kind of percussion going on. It's call and response, lots of energy there. I really enjoyed that one. Let's see, I had another to end with today. Let's see. Oh, Chant for Great Compassion by Abby Bettinas. This is another piece for soprano, alto, female voices, and it uses an ancient text from, I believe, China. Don't quote me on that. So there's a bit of, that foreign language element in it. This is a very fierce piece. There are moments where the singers are chanting, but like speaking very forcefully. Sounds kind of like shouting at some points, but it's very, gives me Lady Galadriel energy, if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, that is a wonderful piece, and Abby Bettinas is a genius. That's all I got.
Right. Yeah. So that
Can
concludes
you tell I did not prepare?
our second episode. So if you've made it this long, we're at 45 minutes already. If you've made it this long, you get a gold star and, a figurative gold star.
And a pencil to
And a
take to your
pencil.
next rehearsal.
So, yeah, we're going to end it there. So until next time, farewell.
Bye, everyone.